Supreme Court has come down heavily on Patanjali again. Yoga Guru Baba Ramdev and his aide Balkrishna were in Supreme Court in the contempt of court case against Patanjali Ayurveda in connection with its misleading ads and COVID cure claims. The court had come down heavily on Patanjali founders earlier as well, stating that they can't take India for a ride. It had also pulled up Uttarakhand government for not acting against the Haridwar-based company. Now, Ramdev and Balkrishna said that they are ready to offer a public apology. Patanjali is in the court for misleading ad claims that Patanjali drugs have cured people of diabetes, high blood pressure, thyroid, liver cirrhosis, arthritis, as well as asthma. Now, misleading ads have become a menace in India. We often come across ads that say our products can cure diseases, or this drink can help your child grow, or this diet can help you cleanse your system. All of these with an intent to either sell a product or a service using false claims. To discuss the menace of misleading ads and to discuss what can the government do to actually get rid of this problem perhaps once and for all. With us is Lloyd Mathias, he's an angel investor. Also with us is Dr. Sanjeev Bagai, he's a pediatrician. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining in. I want to first come to you, Dr. Bagai. You know, Patanjali, sticking on to Patanjali, because that's the big story today, sir. In the court, we have Baba Ramdev once again appearing and saying, we are ready to offer an apology. Is an apology enough? From what we are reading in court day after day, weeks after week, that Supreme Court is clearly unhappy that no action was taken on Patanjali for making those claims for years now, and they must pay up. What do you think the court should be doing at this point in time? What should really happen to Patanjali? What kind of perhaps penalty should the court levy on Patanjali to set a precedent in the matter?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. You've given me a complete buffet of questions. Just to address them very quickly. First of all, Patanjali has been, as a company, a serial offender. No question about it. Their advertisements, their videos, their proclamations in writing and verbally on electronic and print media have been misleading, fraudulent, deceptive, misinformation, and pulling away patients from the routine line of science. I have no problem at all, individually and collectively, following my medical fraternity, that medical sciences exist and there is a science and there is truth in every field. But we don't decry or bring down other lines of medicine. So I think also Patanjali has been showing other lines of medicine down, especially during COVID, not only with the oil installation in the nose, which was positively dangerous, but again, talking about the ill effects of the vaccine drive during the catastrophic pandemic. More importantly, it has taken patients away from the routine line of medicine and the window of period, which is a safety period, especially in chronic organ disease like chronic kidney disease, chronic liver disease, indeed cancers. The downfall, spiraling down as a free fall, can be very rapid, and indeed patients can suffer and die. Coming to the second part of your question with regards what should be done, I think all advertisements, and I must be fair, although I'm not a great promoter of that company, but all companies which are issuing ads have to be responsible. The other offenders are skin companies who make skin and hair oil, etc. People who make products for hair growth, immune boosting, energy drinks. I think everyone should come under the same gamut. It should be a level playing field. No advertisement which is without scientific backup should be allowed to be aired or printed. What Patanjali should undergo, I think it should not. Public apology itself is totally insufficient. I think it needs to get its act together. The people who actually suffered. Now here comes a Pandora's box, because it's almost impossible to actually scientifically identify how many people have actually taken the medicines and deteriorated, how many people took this medicine and not the routine allopathic medicine. So I think there needs to be a government supervised forum where people can address their claims. But I think Patanjali should pay financially and otherwise.
Absolutely.
Over to you.
Absolutely. Patanjali should pay. With me in our studios is, of course, Krishna and Kartik here. You know, as journalists, we've been discussing this issue for a very long time, and we know that a mere apology is not enough. Perhaps some penalty should be levied. We'll of course have to wait for Supreme Court to come out with its final clear judgment on the matter. But having rejected that apology twice in itself is a big message, Krishna.
Well, absolutely. And the fact that timing has been given, a deadline has been given for a public apology says a lot about this particular case, and that's how serious the top court of the country is. Because, Shweta, we live in an age of misinformation and disinformation thanks to social media. The last thing we would want is that certified advertisements which are allowed to go on multiple platforms coming out with spurious information, adding to all the chaos that exists already. So in that sense, this, if you ask me, it's a beginning of things to come. How are products supposed to advertise themselves? They can have positive effects, they can have, they can help certain treatments, but if they're being advertised as the cure for certain illnesses, that too big illnesses. We talk about Patanjali products which said that they can cure diabetes for God's sakes, and then, other big illnesses as well, hypertension and BP and etc., etc. So these are dangerous statements and claims to be made in advertisements, in clear advertisements. Man, advertising, it's a matter of money. You give money to a particular platform, you can put your advertisements out there. So, and of course, we have an Advertising Standards and Council of India as well. But this goes far beyond that as well, because these are going to come into your social media feeds. These are going to come into things that in a vulnerable moment, many people can choose these products thinking that, oh, maybe this is the cure that I've been waiting for, and this can lead to disastrous consequences, as the doctor just mentioned. So I really hope that the Patanjali case is the beginning of things to come.
Absolutely. And I want to go to other such misleading false advertisements as well, Kartik. But for Patanjali, because we've been talking about Patanjali for a while now, what is the next course scenario that you see unfolding? The next hearing is of course slated, date for which has now come out. But what should happen with Patanjali at this point to set a precedent where, Patanjali's vary and people also understand other companies who are in the same business of homeopathy, Ayurveda, also understand and learn a lesson in the long run?
So I think it'll be a little, foolhardy to preempt what the courts are going to do on the next hearing on the 23rd of April. And is that going to be the final hearing or not? Also, we don't know. So, given the way judiciary also works, there could be a further extension even beyond the 23rd of April. I mean, let's not speculate what order the court will eventually come with.
No,
if you ask me as a citizen or as a journalist, I think there has to be some penalty. There has to be some serious penalty and example set, so that this mistake is not repeated by Patanjali, definitely, but even all those pseudoscience products out there, should be doubly sure, triply sure of what they are advertising and whether their claims can stand the test of time and can stand water or not. However, I believe that there's a diametrically different situation when it comes to another similar claim being made by a product like Bourvita, for example, right? So while at one level Patanjali is talking about cure, you also have a product like Bourvita, which is also something we've discussed multiple times in the past, which is actually saying that it is helping your child build an immune system and is helping your child grow. So that is another issue which not the courts so far, but other government bodies have come after and saying that this healthy label, healthy tag needs to be done away with. So I think overall we are living in a time where there is optimism that at least these misleading claims are being attacked and are really being taken up seriously, and some example I think the court will set. However, I think the court is also right now more angry about the contempt of court because an order was passed and that order was not adhered to by Patanjali.
Absolutely. And coming to Lloyd, perhaps someone who tracks brands, Lloyd, I think the country is also currently battling with two problems here. One is, of course, there is a surge of misleading advertisements off late that we are noticing and hearing of, but also the fact that ASCI, an Advertising Standard Council, looks like a paper tiger, does not have much authority to either clamp down on these organizations or these advertisements, and even if they do, some of the penalties are non-binding in nature. What are we looking at as far as proper policy is concerned? Do we have a policy in the first place to clamp down on misleading ads?
Thank you, Shweta. I think just 2 points before I get down to answering your question. I think complete agreement with what Dr. Bagai said. I think specifically in the case of Patanjali, I think the issue being of making false claims on an issue as serious about health and about curative, I think is a very, very serious issue. Therefore, I think just letting them go with a plain apology is not good enough. I think they will have to come out with some kind of advertising, talking about the fact that some of the claims just don't stand the test of science. And in a sense, that this opens up the whole fear of other people making similar claims. The other point, if I may, a very small suggestion, is that for any health-related products, products that tend to be curative or promise a clear health benefits, I think there has to be some kind of basic certifying authority, whether it's a medical council or something, so that these don't go unchecked. Now, coming specifically to the question of the Advertising Standards Council of India, you have to understand, Shweta, that the Advertising Standards Council is an industry body for self-regulation. It was kind of created in a sense so that not every advertisement has to go through a government censorship. Therefore, it's self-regulation and therefore has its limitations. And I think notable and reputed advertisers tend to stick to the boundaries of regulation. And therefore, there are lots of other operators who always play loose and fast with the rules, as seems to be the case with Patanjali and a whole lot of others. I think, therefore, it's time the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, the Consumer Affairs Ministry, empowers the Advertising Standards Council or creates a parallel body that can penalize offenders and certainly severely penalize repeat offenders, which in the case of Patanjali is the case. So I think that's an issue. To the point that Kartik brought up, I think a lot of brands, and the ones he mentioned are mainstream multinational brands, but there are a whole lot of neighborhood brands that stick a little, healthy, add a word diet, something, say that this is big. Absolutely no backup of claims. I think that needs to be looked at very seriously because people are making active choices. Today, a lot of us are ordering from, e-commerce sites. And therefore, we just go by these very random, unsubstantiated claims. And I think there we need a much more deeper regulatory mechanism so that anyone making an incorrect or a false health claim can actually stand up to scrutiny and can get debarred in a very severe manner.
Dr. Bagai, hi, good evening. Thanks, for being here with us. Is there actually some sort of a precedent that you think is now going to get set against Ayurveda as a category? Because as a country, we are actually, claiming Ayurveda to be pretty much our calling card for the world. So, do you see Ayurveda as a category getting impacted with the Patanjali judgment, or is it going to be company specific?
You took the words out of my mouth. I raised my finger actually to highlight this point. Unfortunately, through all these early morning poses and deep breathing and XYZ, what it has done is that company of Patanjali has tried to make at the same level to equate Ayurveda with yoga. They're two separate issues altogether. So I have no problem if this gentleman, Mr. Ramdev, he's not a Baba, he's not a guru, practices his yoga, he's doing excellent work in that, and it does help the body. But that's not Ayurveda. Now, unfortunately, the spillover ripple effect has definitely impacted Ayurveda. Like I said in my first opening statements, Ayurveda is a distinct medical science. It's up to the patients to decide which line of medicine they want to follow. But here, I want to make a distinction. Sorry. In health products which are orally consumed with a false pretense that it can have a one-time magical cure, even for conditions like dengue, cancer, diabetes, hypertension, and other very, very acute and high mortality diseases, is much more serious than a misleading ad of a skin or a hair product. I mean, you may not ultimately develop hair or regrow hair, but you will not die because of that. But with misleading ads of this company, patients can stop the medicines, tend to rely on these kind of magical one-time remedies, and indeed have an early death. So the distinction needs to be made. Therefore, the penalty on this company promoting health products and one-time magical remedial cures for diseases which otherwise have no cure, I think should receive a much harsher and punitive punishment.
Okay, harsher and punitive punishment. Lloyd, how does the end user, and tell us as an advertiser yourself, how does an end user distinguish between which claims to believe and which not to believe? I understand hair growth and skin care may be very different from the medicines that I'm consuming orally. But as a consumer, if there is a brand which is advertising, how do I know which part of the ad to trust and which part of the ad to ignore?
The truth, Kartik, is there's no real simple solution for the consumer. Well, that's absolutely true. I think today a lot of consumers go by the reputation of the company and the brand and believe that good reputed companies which have a long history will not mislead consumers, right? Eventually, they're here for the long haul. And I'm sure there are things like shareholder activism and such like that look at that aspect. I think, therefore, consumers really don't have a very clear way of determining. Just have to kind of play safe, do your own due diligence, examine facts and such like. And I think that is the concern. The second issue, like I said, is that any product that makes any kind of health claim, and as Dr. Bagai suggested, health claim can be right from the very top, which is promising cures of diseases that really we don't have scientific evidence to that effect, down to products that claim to be healthy and lower your cholesterol or improve your metabolism, and a lot of, should we say, relatively more minor lifestyle and health benefits. I think need go through some sort of scientific validation. I think sooner than later, we need to have some kind of validation by a certified authority that lets a product add health or diet or make certain claims that consumers are going to believe in. I think until that kind of standards body really establishes, I think brands and businesses will continue to play fast and loose with the rules. And I fear that we are really in a situation. On the good side, though, I think the fact that the Supreme Court has taken a very, very stern view on this, I think is a great example. There'll be a huge ripple down effect for a series of advertisers. And like I said, advertisers well beyond the ambit of those who follow the guidelines of the Advertising Standards Council. I think that will help.
Okay.
Other minor point I want to make, and I think Dr. Bagai kind of alluded to it, is that the worry is that very often this debate gets sullied on social media with the fact that is it the court siding with Western medicine versus Indian medicine? I think the issue is far beyond that. It's not about that. I think there's a certain scientific validity to Ayurveda, which is certainly conceded. But people making false claims just to commercially benefit is simply not on and not acceptable.
All right. Okay. I just have one quick question from you, Lloyd. The last time we heard of the Bourvita controversy, we also heard Bourvita actually going after that influencer who called out Bourvita as a health drink and pointed out the sugar content in Bourvita. There was this entire conversation around if there is a council or a body supported by the government regulating ads, perhaps it could be biased, hence the need for self-regulation, which is why ASCI came into being in the first place. What is the way forward when it comes to actually taking on false claims that can be damaging, like Dr. Bagai said, where there is a threat to life and a suggestion of a magical cure or a magical remedy versus the more, non-harmful, perhaps not very harmful and not very serious claims of a drink making you stronger, making you healthier. Do you think it's time that we differentiate between the two categories?
Absolutely. I think to put all advertising through a regulator as a censor board may be asking for too much. It'll just add one more level of bureaucracy. Two is the reality of today's social media is almost any one of us is a media to ourselves. I mean, I can put out a false claim and, by the time someone gets down to rectifying it, it'll be a long while. So I think putting all advertising is far-fetched. But I do believe that health products or products that have a direct impact of health, both positively and negatively, I think they need to go to a certain level of very basic scrutiny. It could be a medical council or some kind of consumer, some kind of certified medical authority that can really certify the validity of the claims. Just like the US FDA, and we have our own version of the FFAI. But I think this requires far more deeper scientific rigor and certainly a strong representation of the medical community. Because when people make purchases on this, they're actually doing things that are directly going to impact their health. And that is absolutely serious.
Dr. Bagai, before we let you go, one final help if you could give to our audience by wearing your pediatrician's hat this time around. For all the young parents out there, we understand there may not be benefits of drinks like Bourvita and Horlicks, etc. But are there some very serious disadvantages, and how much is too much and how much is okay to go ahead with?
You're turning out to be a mind reader. So the last point which I actually wanted to make is that the products which are most heavily advertised and misused, abused and overused are multivitamins, immunity boosters and other health drinks, especially in children, adolescents and young teenagers. Hypervitaminosis, that means excess vitamin, does us more harm than good. In fact, it causes serious side effects. We've seen patients coming in who've taken years of calcium, continuous month-on-month high dose vitamin D. Now, these are all very dangerous. They cause serious side effects. There is no parent psychologically who is satisfied with the child's weight. So if you tell a patient, a family or a child's family that if you take this once a day or twice a day, your child is going to increase in weight or height, growth is something which is dearest to everyone's heart. So if you tell a short family that your child will become tall, that person will sell his house and continue to give the medicines. If you tell a person that your child has a recurrent cold and coughs and if you take this as an immunity booster, you'll stop going to the doctor altogether. The patient family will be totally misled. So I think the advertisement standards need to be scrutinized. There have to be guidelines put in, especially now with the Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook. Also, please understand most of these sites are silently in a subtle manner AI enhanced, right? So whether you like it or not, if you search it once, you'll keep seeing these ads popping up on your inbox. So I think we need to be careful in what we say, what we write, what we promote, what we advertise. Overall, there is only one advice which I will give everyone is responsibility. Responsibility of the doctors not to get lured with MRs and drug companies. Responsibility of the companies not to give misleading ads. And responsibility of the parents and the patient families use medicines carefully.
All right, Dr. Sanjeev Bagai, Lloyd Mathias, thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining in this afternoon. We are, of course, talking about misleading advertisement, a case that we often bring up here on News9 as consumers. Your responsibility as well to be sure of what you're consuming, the products and services that you are letting in your lives, in your daily habits.